Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey with Married at First Sight. Let's get to the show.
When I take stock and kind of review everything that happened in Panama, for me, I felt like I had failed in our marriage. And so it was hard to wear it.
Is it that whenever our marriage get hard, you just want to take it off? Like, is it like a thing where you feel like it's not mandatory?
So it's an interesting thing that Michael is saying here, and you said this before, that he has failed and that he took off his wedding ring because he felt like he failed. Now, we could take his word for that. Maybe that's how he sees things. I failed. I don't deserve to wear this wedding ring. There's another possibility. There's a number of other possibilities. But one that comes to mind is that deep down, he doesn't really feel like he failed. He feels like he was treated unfairly by Meka. And he felt like he had to fall on his own sword and admit he failed when he doesn't actually feel like he failed. And as a way of a passive aggression to get back at her, he's going to take off the ring because he knows it's going to hurt her feelings. You'll see people do this. People who grow up in families where they aren't allowed to be angry, they're not allowed to strike back, or they're not allowed to assert themselves very well. They will learn that you can't really be upfront with your anger. And anger is good, by the way. Anger tells us that your rights are being infringed upon, and it tells you like something's wrong and you gotta do something. Now, there's bad behavior with anger and there's good behavior with anger. So for people that have to suppress their anger, the anger's still there and the feeling of being treated unfairly is still there. Well, you got to express it somehow. And one of the ways that people do is what they call passive aggression. The internet uses passive aggression, or culture uses passive aggression in this very liberal way. Often it's just applied to aggression. But passive aggression means that you don't know that the person is angry. So that in the personality sense, when we talk about passive aggression, something is happening to you and you feel kind of bad. You might feel very bad, scared or hurt or something's going on, but you're looking around and you're like, why do I feel this way? Because this person is being so nice. So for Meka, she might be like, this really hurts and this feels very hurtful to me. But when I look at Michael, he's the one saying that he failed. So why am I feeling so hurt right now? And that's what passive aggression is. I don't know if that's Michael's deal. There's no way for me to know without assessing him for 5 to 10 sessions, but that's another possibility. There's other possibilities too. But anyway, let's continue watching.
I just don't want to feel like anytime we get in an argument, your first response is going to be to take off the ring, because that's what it seems like to me. Like, you just took it off so quick in Panama, and like, for me, I'm like, how can he claim to like be committed to this process, but he won't wear his wedding ring?
So it's natural for Meka to be hurt, which she's not really exhibiting up front. She's being more confrontational, which is understandable. She's hurt. I wish that the marriage and family therapist was in the room and could ask Meka, okay, so it's totally fine that you have this worry. What are you feeling right now? Because we want to get to Meka's hurt feelings. Because right now, she is kind of going on the attack, which is somewhat understandable, again, given how the ring thing is, I'm intuiting, making her feel, which is hurt and rejected. But this is probably just going to make him feel more attacked, which I think he's felt frequently with Meka. And it's going to cause him to suppress even more, maybe, become more passive-aggressive or even overtly aggressive. Because remember, the original fight was the thing that started this whole thing off, and the thing that's still present, I think, is that they were flying down to Panama for their honeymoon. They had a conversation, and each of them had a completely different view of what happened. For Meka, she thought he was pressuring her to have sex with him and demanding that she have sex with him, regardless of whether or not she wanted to or not. That's what she said he did to her. That is a horrible, horrible thing to have done to you, right? But from his perspective, he said, that's not what happened. I was just trying to say having sex in a marriage is very important to me. He had a whole different narrative that wasn't saying, you better have sex with me because you're married to me now. And each person is holding on to that still, I'm guessing, that hurt for her of like, you treated me like I was just a piece of meat. How could you have done that to me? And then you lied to me is another narrative. You lied when the cameras are on. And for him, I'm guessing he hasn't really expressed this overtly, which is you took my words and twisted it in the most horrendous, horrific way, in a way that I have never said to anyone. And I've never even thought, I don't know, maybe Michael is a terrible person and he's very pressuring with his sex. There are people like that out there for sure. But who knows? It's just speculating. Maybe Michael is sitting over here going like, it was a miscommunication, Meka. And you accused me of forcing you to have sex with me, even though you didn't, and you did it on camera, and then you called me a liar. And the only way out of that conversation was for me to fall on my sword and to say, yes, it was 100% my fault. I was the wrong person. I did everything wrong. And now it was up to me to win you back. So who knows? I just wish that there's just so much tension, I'm thinking, around those issues right now that I really worry about them. And will the marriage and family therapist get involved with these people? You people that have watched this show to the end, you know the answer to that question. I'm guessing she does. But I don't understand these shows. They have the professionals that are probably being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, get them involved.
I think for me, everything that happened in that short amount of time was a lot for me. And that was my emotional response at that moment.
The point that I'm trying to make is that even when it's overwhelming, you still need to wear your ring. Even when it's tough, even when we're not seeing eye to eye, like, we should both still wear a ring. Like, that's the commitment that you make. That's part of being married. I need to know, like, 24/7, you're committing to this marriage by wearing this wedding ring.
So Meka is saying something that's reasonable. And I think she's saying it in a way that for Michael, he might actually be able to hear. He seems to be really taking it in. And I'm guessing Michael interprets this as a message of acceptance, because you could take this either way, right? It could be a rejection, like you're going to do what I tell you or else, or I really want to be in this marriage and it hurts me when you don't have your ring on. I wish Meka would say something like that. I wish she'd be just, when I don't see the wedding ring on your hand, it really hurts my feelings. And I just have to say, like, when we're having good times and then I remember or I notice the ring isn't there, it just, my heart falls. And you could really make my day a lot brighter if you could put that ring on, because it's so important to me. Like, those kinds of things tend to get across to people better.
I agree with that. Moving forward, starting anew today, the commitment is to wear it at all times from this day forward. Cool. To me, recommitting to wearing our rings feels like such a big deal, probably even bigger than our actual wedding night. Because back then, we're both just committing to a stranger. Since then, we've gotten to know each other.
So it's great. They worked it out. This was a pretty big moment for this couple. They seem to be understanding each other better, giving each other more goodwill, more grace to each other. And this is the kind of thing that you want to see. And going back to my scientific matchmaking deep dive, when I looked into all the research, it has less to do with matching people up on things that they're similar about and more to do with things like this. In that moment, Michael could have been like, no, I still feel like a failure, so I'm not going to wear the ring. And that causes the relationship to go in a different direction. In that moment, Michael said, you know what? I'm going to wear the ring. And now the relationship is going in a different direction. That's what causes relationships to work or not work, is these tiny little decisions that get made, minute to minute, day to day. And as you build the positivity, it makes you feel better about the relationship and makes you more resilient to the negative things that happen. Whereas if you have a lot of negativity, John Gottman found through his research that you have to have 5 positives for every 1 negative. Now, if that means that you have 5 positives in a week and 1 negative in a week, then that's what it means. Or if you have 5 negative things in a week, you got to have 25 positive things. So some couples will look like, wow, they fight all the time, but maybe they have a lot of positive moments as well. Whereas another couple, they fight like once a year, but they have almost no positive interactions to counteract that 1 negative thing. Now, how do we gauge to encapsulate a positive and a negative? But that's when they coded they would actually videotape or watch through a one-way mirror couples as they interacted, and they found that there's this ratio of it has to be at least 5-1. And that what that tells us is that it's about decisions, it's about behavior, it's about interactions. It's not so much about the commonalities that you have and the statistical markers of whether or not you're going to work out or not. It has to do with the behaviors that happen after you've been matched.
So who better to learn that from than her mom? Being that you guys are super close, is there any advice that you think I should kind of take heed to, or things that I should be prepared for, things I should be mindful of, just to be, a better husband, a better friend as I continue this process in our marriage?
I'm gonna tell you the same thing I told her. Just be patient with each other and take things day by day and pick your battles. Not everything is worth fighting over.
Yeah, I know I've made some mistakes early on.
So it's good. That's good advice. Take things day by day and pick your battles and be patient. It's wonderful. It's hard to put into practice for a lot of people without a couples therapist, by the way. But that pick your battles one actually is an interesting one. And it's one that people often talk about with kids and I guess with spouses as well. With kids, it's like parents would come to me and they would be having issues with their kids. And I would review the whole situation and I would find that half the time they're fighting about the kid's bedroom. And I would say, okay, totally fine if as parents that's a deal breaker for you. You got to have a clean, you really want your kid to have a clean bedroom. But let's make a priority list of the top 10 things that you want to get done with your kid on a week-by-week basis. Okay, let's make a list. I want my kid to not use drugs. I want my kid to go to school. I want my kid, and these are things that aren't guaranteed with these particular kids. I want my kid to stop using drugs. I want my kid to stop skipping school. I want my kid to stop yelling at us. I want my kid to do one chore a week. I want my kid to not yell at teachers at school. I want my kid to stop getting Fs. I want my kid to come home on time. I want my kid to ask for permission before taking the car, and so on. And these are things that are very of concern with this particular kid given their behavior. And then we get all top 10, and I'm like, well, notice that cleaning the bedroom isn't in there. Because if you had none of the top 10 things, then we could talk about battling over cleaning their room. We have much bigger fish to fry. Think about it like you have a certain amount of conflict points that you can spend in a week. Do you want to spend half of them on the bedroom? Or would you rather spend all of them or a majority of them on no drugs, coming home on time, staying in school, these kinds of things? Much more important than their bedroom, right? Help parents to problem solve around this. It's the same when it comes to couples. It's like, okay, he's talking about going number 2 all the time, and I don't like that. Well, if that's one of the 3 things that you want to work on, then maybe that's a battle worth having. Or let's say there are bigger battles worth having. Then you want to think about, I'm trying to think of like a common thing I'll hear in couples therapy. Well, honestly, sometimes sex is actually, even though that can seem like a really big deal, and it is, but for a lot of couples that are coming to me, they have, and I ask them to kind of prioritize, there are more important things than having a happy sexual life. Sex is very important, but for some couples, there are more important things. Like, I want to feel safe. I want to go for a week without getting in a fight. I want to feel like you really love me. These, for a lot of people, are more fundamental than having a fun, satisfactory sex life. And so we might say, okay, well, let's hit 1, 2, and 3, and maybe let's get to sex after we get those 3. Oftentimes, you do those 3, the sex will follow. Not all the time, but anyway. So it's good advice from Meka's mom.
I know that my daughter is genuine. I truly feel like you're genuine. Yeah. I embrace you from day one. You've been my son-in-law. Like, when I refer to you, I say my son-in-law. You both are here for a reason. I appreciate the fact that you're still trying. You want to be happy. That's the ultimate goal. That's why you guys are both here. Life is too short to just be like bickering back and forth.
So this is just an hypothesis that I have about human beings that I don't know if I've ever verbalized before, but I've had for many years, which is that as children, when we're not attuned to enough and we're not given enough physical warmth, when your kid is 18 months old and they say, Mama, Dada, and they come to you and they want to be held, or they're 10 years old and you're watching TV and they want to cuddle up next to you. Are you attuned to that? Do you notice that? And are you available to that? Is it uncomplicated sorts of physical warmth with your kid? When kids are given enough physical warmth, then they will adjust and they'll be fulfilled, their needs will be fulfilled, and they will adjust in more positive directions. For some kids, they're neglected growing up, and there's physically and maybe emotionally, but physically is the thing I want to talk about now. And there's a number of different effects from that. One is that you can put up walls and be like, I'm not going to extend myself. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I might even shut down my need for physical affection. I might even focus on sex as a way of getting as the only way to get physical affection. A lot of men are actually like this in our culture. They will be shamed for wanting physical warmth, or they won't get enough of it. They'll be deprived their whole lives, a little bit or to a great deal. Then they start dating and they finally actually get access to physical warmth for the first time in their life. And they equate it with sex. They're like, I can finally get my emotional and physical warmth needs met for the first time in my life. And it's socially sanctioned as a masculine thing to have sex. Well, I'm going to want sex all the time because it's the only way I can get any of my warmth needs met. Another thing that this is all to lead up to this point, which is that for some people, and I think particularly men who are neglected in this way, they will often self-soothe. It's like they're touching themselves in a way that they wish to be touched because it feels good. It's like you're giving yourself a little massage, and you'll see Michael do this a lot. He's frequently, rubbing his beard, and he's doing this a lot. And right now he's doing this. It's just a lot of like trying to ground yourself or just trying to soothe yourself because and it's interesting that he's talking to his mother-in-law, and maybe there's some like, will you be that person? It's total speculation. I have no idea. But it's been something I've thought about as I've observed people. I've worked with clients who were emotionally neglected, physically neglected, and they sometimes exhibit that kind of behavior. And sometimes by having facial hair, which a lot of dudes do these days, it kind of gives you an excuse to soothe yourself. I'm just touching my face all the time. But anyway. Speculation.
Is an argument, your happiness means more than being right.
Yeah. I think she's ambitious and bold. She's kind, she's compassionate, and I'm really happy and lucky to be married to her. So it's just really just looking at it optimistically towards our future as we continue to build and get to know each other.
So I really like that Michael and his mother-in-law had a conversation. I like those little other glimpses into people's lives. You get a little bit more of a feel of the full life of Meka, for example. You meet the mom. You get a little bit more data there. All right. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Tune in next time when we continue with the journey. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.